there's other things that will, those will end up like going away out of view.
Yeah.
But now, again, do one of the things that I'm doing.
Usually we have another space.
Settings. Starts in storage.
Kim, no mark, right?
No mark.
I didn't think so, because I didn't make it. I was like, all right.
It's on configure. And then scroll down. Set that to, or you can leave that one wherever you want, but set that one to 1 May. That way it doesn't take it based on your cloud. Sometimes it reverts it back to the cloud after you touch it.
Oh, okay. Great.
So now you always have access to those folders.
All right, great.
So we'll call the meeting to order. Start recording.
Yeah, we are. We're good.
Okay. Join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item is citizens' statements and petitions. I don't see, do we have anything?
No.
Nobody here.
This side. Laura, I love that the new packet is nice and easily online. Any correspondence to the board? You have the
Eagle.
citations for the Eagle Scouts.
Yes.
We have Cameron Duncan, Andrew Meacham, and
Meacham.
Edward Shea. Meacham?
Meacham.
Hey, Mike. I'm gonna turn this over to you because you were with the Boy Scouts for so long, so.
All right. Well, we have a happy and proud day that we have 3 new Eagle Scouts from, I believe they're all, from Troop 44, so let me just read this citation. I think this is one for all 3 of them.
Yes.
But it says, whereas in this era when traditional precepts of faith and morality appear seriously threatened, it's refreshing to find wholesome American young men who support and respect our sacred institutions, and whereas the Boy Scouts of America instills teamwork and leadership qualities in young men, further promoting the development of strong character, good citizenship, and lasting friendship. If I can just, we need to edit that, qualities in young men and women.
Okay.
Okay? Whereas the Boy Scouts of America have made vital contributions to the youth of Mendon through training in the art of living in the great outdoors while building self-reliance, and whereas Scott Cameron Duncan earned the minimum of 21 merit badges required and served his town in a variety of leadership roles, Cameron Duncan has completed his Eagle Scout Leadership Service project of building a Gaga ball pit at Misco Hill School, and whereas Scout Andrew Meacham earned the minimum of 21 merit badges required and served his troop in a variety of leadership roles, Andrew Meacham has completed his Eagle Scout Leadership Service project by renovating the kitchen in the town cabin, and whereas Scout Edward Shea earned the minimum of 21 merit badges required and served his troop in a variety of leadership roles, Edward Shea has completed his Eagle Scout Leadership Service project by renovating the towboat launch. Now therefore, we, the Select Board of the Town of Mendon, Massachusetts, do hereby on this date, February 16th, 2022, award citations to Cameron Duncan, Andrew Meacham, and Edward Shea. These scouts have completed all the requirements required to earn Scouting's highest rank under the outstanding leadership and direction of Scoutmasters and other adult leaders of Troop 44, Mendon, Massachusetts. And it's added here that the current, I believe he's still a Scoutmaster, Ed Shea, I want to call him Eddie Shea, because he was Eddie when he was a Boy Scout. He's an Eagle Scout when I was a Scoutmaster when I was in college. So this is his son, so this is the second generation. It says here, I have 3 scouts that attained the rank of Eagle. We'll be holding a court of honor on March 12th. We'd like to invite the Select Board to attend and request letters of recognition for the 3 scouts. So I'm sure one of us, I should be able to be there. Hopefully all 3 of us can be. But I'd like to make a motion you know, that we record this citation. I move to award Eagle Scout citations to Scouts Cameron Duncan, Andrew Meacham, and Edward Shea, and I so move.
Step down a second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, these are great.
It's exciting.
I have that back.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know.
Thank you. Consider the quote to survey certain properties located on Maple and Main. So this is that quote, we were, you know, kind of just discussing a couple of options there. So, Kathy, let me know if I miss anything here. So the records room is in disrepair that we all know about, and the town has been working towards getting that records room renovated and into working order so we can utilize it for anything that we can utilize it for. Right now, there's water damage, the floors are buckling. I'm sure that if anybody hasn't heard, that likely everyone has heard. We've been talking about it for quite some time now. So when we met with the Lowells, because there was a concern about how the property lines were laid out around the building, that it was very much, the lot lines were on pretty much the perimeter of the building. When we started to look a little deeper, the lot line isn't even on the building. It's outside of the building. So we had met with the Lowells to discuss maybe even purchasing a little bit of land from them if it was possible to make the property even more usable. That's when we noticed that everything was a little screwy and there was a lot of confusion about where lot lines were even on the Lowell's property. So we had talked about getting a survey done of the corner, which included the Lowell's property as well as 2 parcels that the town owns on that stretch as well. So we did get the quotes in. It's $11,000 to do those surveys, and that's is where we're at now, is to approve it. Now, a couple of things hinge upon getting this survey done. Being able to understand where the lot lines are and what we would need to ask the Lowells for if we were going to expand on the property at all, as well as there's a grant that's due mid-March. That is the grant to renovate the building. So that being said, we're in somewhat of a time crunch to kind of get this done. So the discussion we were talking about earlier was, where do we pay this out of? Where can we pay this out of? And I think the question is, that's where we're at now. I don't think there's a real question of actually moving forward to get it done. If there is, we can discuss it as well. But this has just become a hurdle for us to get this completed. So. With that, if I've missed anything, Kathy, please continue.
I might add some more information. So the building that we're talking about was built in 1825. It is the law office of Seth Hastings. The town actually, in the possession of the Historical Society, has his entire law library that was in the records room. The building has no running water, and it has no septic. So, and we have been wrestling with this for several years. What do you do with this building? The town owns it. It's a pretty historical, component to our community. And, do we just lose it, or do we try to find a source, a resource, or get it to the point where it can be a resource? So, we've looked at several different options. Do we get partial work done on it to stabilize it? Because right now the basement is flooded most of the time. The sump pump works all the time. We have powder post beetle damage under all the beams, which is, if you go down and you touch the beams, they'll just, turn into powdery dust. And it's a brick building, it won't stand on that foundation with no mortar. In the foundation, it's mostly wet and soggy, and it's, probably a health hazard as well. We would rather not see the building just fall in on itself, and we'd like to preserve it. The money that we're talking about in terms of what we can do as a community, and we need to decide, how much money we're going to put into this building. I don't know that we will get all of the money that we need to do all of the work that needs to be done on the building in this grant, because there is a cap on the grant. But we need to make sure that the foundation is stable, that the building is not taking in water, that a French drain is installed, and this is why we need to work with Jane and David Lowell, to see if we can, get on the property around the perimeter. And again, this is the most complex situation that we have, where a building and the land associated is only what seems to be in that footprint of the building. So we have no wiggle room when it comes to that. So we keep working towards a better plan. Do we, get some of the work done? Do we get the engineering plan prepared? Can we sell the building? Will we use the building? How do we make it functional? Can the town, use it as a resource? So we're hoping at least to get our foot in the door on this grant round to at least stabilize the foundation. So we are hoping that we've gotten CPA funding to do an engineering plan, which is the setup as it stands right now is that we will attempt to put a septic on property 9-1 Main Street, which is a town-owned parcel, and then drill a well on the property in the front. And we'll do that with Jane and David's permission, if they're agreeable to that. If we can get the foundation stabilized and a French drain put in, that gets us one step closer to stabilizing the building. And then whatever happens from that point, it won't be cheap, because it's been sitting there for a very long time. But, we want to make the steps to start this process before we lose a building, so we are requesting.
Would it be true that no matter what we do, we need to know what the real lot lines are and where the property actually,
Right, so,
Right.
we need to know this no matter what we do?
Yeah, we do.
right now, there, it was thought that it's assumed that the lot lines are on the perimeter of the building, but when we went and looked at the assessor's maps, there was a small, the actual, what it says the town of Mendon shows off the building, not even under the building. So it looks like the records room is just on the Lowell's property. So this survey will help to get that whole section figured out of who owns what. And I think that, and again, I don't think it's no fault of anyone, it's just nobody's surveyed that in forever, right?
No.
Right, Gene?
And when you do get it, please submit to me.
Yep. There's CAD file, they'll send the CAD files too, as part of the project, so that whole corner can now be set correct on the assessor's maps. So that's where we are, and again, maybe, we kind of would want everybody's feeling on this as far as being on board with doing this. Do we want to, is there more finance people coming?
They're not till 6:30.
Oh, 6:30, okay.
But he could add it to the agenda. This is really a conversation now about funding, right? And so the funding source we have available to move right now on this 11,000 is primarily going to be from FinCom reserve, and that, it doesn't say emergency, it says extraordinary or unforeseen expenditures. So as far as I'm concerned, I think this fits within that. They have $58,000 available, but they'd have to vote on that separately. And again, you can't expend directly from the reserve. We basically charge it to some other line and then transfer from there to cover it. But it's ultimately needs to be on their agenda as well. So you guys would say, yes, you're in support, and then they would decide if they are also in support.
What we know is that it's $11,000 professional services, so we don't need to go out for any bids. It's below the threshold, and because of what the expenditure is, it's something that we can decide to do, or the FinCom can decide to spend it. But we would be in, Gene, you have a question or a comment?
I was wondering if CPA funds could be utilized.
Yes, we're told it's already been expended for
Yes,
this year, so.
We pretty much tapped out all of the administrative funds.
On the
The engineering plan, and then if we get this grant from Mass Historic, they will do a 50 match with us. CPA funds will, and it probably will not be the only time we go back to the CPA funds to finish the project, so, you know, we just want to get it as stable as possible at this point.
Yeah, the end of the administrative funds were expended on the, and I'm sorry, I guess we can probably throw it on the screen, but was on the engineering plan of the building, not knowing that this was gonna be coming down the pike. This probably would have been done first.
Can you put that up on the screen, just share it? Do you have that ability?
Yeah, we do. Laura, can you open
And,
up?
and the issue is, the reason for the
Yeah.
extraordinary circumstances.
Oh, actually, no, it's
besides
not your computer.
that being an acceptable source, we have to have this completed before we can apply for the grant. And there's a deadline for the grant for the first week in March.
March, yeah, second week. Yeah.
And the grant's what, a 50/50 on
It
whatever we
is a
spend?
50/50.
Do we have an estimate on what the total value of stabilizing the property would be? Do we have
We
any
do
kind of cost on
not,
that?
we're still calling in people to come in and give us quotes. We do know the one, you know, one quote that we got 2 years ago was that in order to replace the sill and replace the floor, which would involve lifting the building, is gonna be in the ballpark of $90,000. So we're not even talking about the French drain yet or the foundation. So, you know, if we can get to that point where we're not taking water on anymore, we can dry up that building.
Does the basement have a slab in it?
No,
No, it
it
does
does
not.
not.
And to tell you how long it's been wet like that, my son's high school colleague was looking at it as a possible Eagle project to put the sump in, and he's already 31. So it's been wet for an awful long time. But the point is, whether we decide to spend a whole bunch of money to fix it, or just wanted to sell it, we can't do anything with it until we get this step first. So that's why we're looking at this
No, I
right now.
understand. To
Right.
make it marketable.
It's a good
to the
question.
town. Yeah, so to make it marketable to the town, we have to be
Right,
able
we
to
have to.
just say we know where it lies. Which piece is it exactly?
So this is the actual records room right here. And then this is where it says the lot is on the assessor's map.
So basically, the walkway in front of it is where the map thinks that it is, but it's not. It's actually behind that, which could be on somebody's property, somebody's private property, maybe it isn't. Obviously, since that's been there for an awful long time, the assumption is that the map is wrong and that we'll have to fix it, which is what this is, we're talking about.
I know you talked about septic and a well. I know the separation needs to be 100 feet. Is that something you could get on that piece of property?
So again, these are just ideas. And so the original reason that we even went to go talk to the Lowells about it was because we were going to see if we could, thinking that it was here,
Okay.
we were going to see if we could extend it back
Oh,
to here
that's
and
right.
buy
You did
some
say
land
cap-
from
like
them,
capture.
or something along those lines, or to be able to either put in just a, even if it's a tight tank, that was a thought, if we could do that, so that there was usable, make the building a little bit more usable. And then, it's off the map right now, but on the other side of Mr. Vicino's house, over here is a sliver parcel that was taken for tax title, which it's possible that we could maybe put the well there, and we would have to pipe it down to the records room, or maybe get an easement from, through somebody's property or something like that, if it's possible. But those are all items that would be nice to have, not necessary to have, right? So those things will come as we move along, but we don't even know where it sits at the moment.
Okay. That makes sense.
So, I mean, as far as the selectmen, approving to do it, I'll just kind of reiterate that, World Band does work for Gary and Hellman. There's no other people here to vote tonight, so I'm probably going to vote on it, but this by no means has anything to do with my business relationship with Gary and Hellman.
Right. So should we probably just refer it to the FinCom
Sorry, Nick.
to, is he waiting to get in?
Well, we can vote to do it pending FinCom approval, I
Well,
suppose.
I would, make a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign the Gary and Helen Inc. proposal for the existing conditions plan in 81X Plan Maple and Main Street, not to exceed $11,000.
I'll step down in second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Oh,
So
sorry.
moving forward with funding this
Well, pending funding, approval of the
Well,
funding
that's
through
what
the
I'm saying, we
FinCom.
could potentially try to fund it from somewhere else and then ask for the FinCom, but move forward.
I think that once the FinCom, yeah, I guess
Okay. So
I don't, to me, it doesn't matter where we fund it from. I just think it's important that we get it done, so wherever the FinCom feels would be the best bet.
Well, I would say that, to put it from FinCom reserve would make the most sense.
Well, I'm just asking if it's conditional upon them using reserve. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Because there are no other sources to pull from.
Right. In concept, I mean, in another 2 months, we will have, because we
Yeah.
can do transfers, but
Yeah, but due to the timing of when we need to get it done and
Right,
all
that's my point.
Yeah.
That-
I'd rather
that-
transfer the money back to the FinCom reserve.
That block of money is there exactly for this type of a thing that arises.
Yeah.
So,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, everybody.
Do we have a quorum in, or do you want to go?
So we got, Nick is remote. We have 3 here, that's 4, that's a quorum.
That's a quorum, yeah.
Do you want to call your meeting? to order?
Yeah, so I call, excuse me, calling the FinCom meeting to order at 6:25 on February 16th.
Do we want to, hi, Nick. Do we want to? Good evening. Do we want to proceed, or do you guys want to wait for any more
I would
members?
prefer to wait till 6:30, just to confirm that everyone's here, or anyone who's going to be here.
That's
I
fine.
don't want to make a vote prior to,
Yeah, no problem. I can,
definitely circle back to the.
yeah, I can just do a quick update on the block party. So where we're at, we've been trying to meet every Saturday at 2 o'clock. We meet here for anybody that's interested. The things that have come up, I think that for the Board of Selectmen would be, or the Select Board, I should say, sorry. The items are one-day alcohol permits, things along those lines. What do we need for insurances? What do we need for anything to start to talk about the logistics of it? Maybe with the police department, we can invite them in. We've reached out to Mr. Icardi that owns the building across the street, and he's allowed to use that parking lot area for the bands that we're trying to get. We've talked to a carnival that will ask the Finos if we can set up on the corner up there, and probably utilize that parking, that area for parking, that allow people to pass through the carnival with some rides. Maybe even bring them in the night before, or the day before, so the carnival will be there with some traffic for the carnival, as well as that will help remind people that we are going to be having the block party the next day. It's planned for September. I believe. That would be the weekend after Labor Day weekend, yes, so September 10th. And we're still working on trying to get, we're starting to talk to the vendors we'd hope to get down here to, whether there'll be food. Then we're also talking about, we've talked to the fireworks company to do fireworks in the back of the field out of Shelley's, Vincent's Fields over here, so that we don't have to, I think last year they were up the street, so to be able to watch them from down in the actual block party area. So we're still moving forward with that. That's my quick update.
So, I was reviewing all of the special articles from previous town meetings today, and there is $28,000 still in the line for the 350th. So, if they're gonna want access to that funding, we should move it and repurpose it at ATM, so we should remember to put an article on if that's something that we're gonna wanna do.
The other question was too, as far as, this is, yeah, sorry, almost forgot this. For people that are gonna make donations, there was a couple of options that was brought up. So I know that generally when the donations come in, they have to be accompanied by a letter, and it kind of a, it's a fine for a one-time big donation or something like that, but if people are sending in $50 and $100 and things along those lines, how does that work? Can we just find out the logistics of that for the, of how if the town was to manage that money, if not, there was discussion that it may be able to go through another nonprofit that may be available to do that for us.
Yeah, exactly.
Might be a better avenue than trying to fund it through that.
Could we just ask them to donate to the Brothers of the Brush?
That's, they're gonna discuss that at the next meeting, I guess that was the,
We would just look at what we did for funding last time and see what worked or didn't work. I
okay.
mean,
If
really.
we could just check on that, all right. Great.
Wasn't that long ago.
No. So, that's about all I got for the update right now. I'd say we're close enough to the 6:30 timeframe. First budget presentation is the water board.
Yes. But budget, 6:30. Yes. Let's come in here.
I think it's on the,
Yeah, sure, come on, please. Oh, Mike's here too.
Like dropped off whenever they get back, and I'm still gonna be here, right?
How's it going, everybody? Sure, go right ahead.
make room.
Vincent Roy,
Water Commissioners.
Kevin Rudd, for the Water Commissioners.
And Dan Byer, I'm the clerk for the water board.
Okay.
Do you want us to screen share, or you guys have information? I don't know how you want to handle this.
You can pull it up. You
I
probably
printed out the materials, so.
Okay, yeah, I uploaded a bunch of stuff late last week.
Yep,
Very much appreciated, thank you.
I can pull it up here.
Yeah, pull a chair over and take Mark's place.
Yeah, could be the chairman tonight.
Where is that?
Hold on, that's gonna be, hold on, I gotta get the link to that.
So just while Lonnie pulls this up, I put this in our document, but so the water commission budget's a little weird. It's basically broken into two pieces. Part of it's in the general fund, that's the town-owned public water supplies, part of this building, the senior center, the library. And then the other part is the public system that serves the customers, which is in what's called an enterprise fund.
There you go.
So it's kind of its own little thing. So first, I figured it was easier to talk about our general fund budget. There were a few discrepancies between our request and the actual budget spreadsheet. I haven't looked in a few days to see if that got fixed.
I'm not updating the sheet until
Yeah.
after the next meeting, so that we don't have
Okay.
multiple versions.
Yeah. Let's see. I don't know, so I don't know if you want me to go line by line and talk about it, or if you just want us to talk about increases. I don't know,
So I had a question on the fire hydrant expenses. So that's to
Yep.
cover flushing. Totally agree, it should be on some sort of regular cadence maintenance, right?
Yeah,
Make
so-
sure they're
yeah, so
operational.
that's our new request.
Yeah. But in terms of the sporadic flushing, who previously paid for that? Where did,
So the deal with that, so we're requesting a new line for $3,200, $3,250, which is 50% of the cost for valve maintenance and hydrant flushing. Previously, that was done by Hopedale. I don't know how into the history of the water system you want to get. Basically, Hopedale managed everything for us, and we paid him, and he just did the work. That relationship ended. We had to hire a certified water operator, so we use Whitewater. And unfortunately, everything is a contracted service. So they gave us a quote for an annual flushing program and exercising the valves, which was $6,250.
Which is paid for now by the 153 water users.
And it just did, so the idea was to split it, that it does have some benefit to the town in terms of the hydrants that are for fire protection. If we didn't need fire protection, we could get rid of most of those.
So this expense was always there, it's just now we're looking to split it 50/50 with
It was,
the
yeah, it was being
residents.
paid in full by the enterprise fund.
Yeah, okay.
It was actually suggested to us 3 years ago at the FinCom meeting. I believe you brought it up with us. Because basically when the fire,
Do you want me to share mine?
the hydrants are used. And, you know, we're paying to keep them in good order. And I would point out that when we took it over from Oakdale, we started an annual program. There was not a clear annual program before that. Various hydrants are flushed every year. We don't have enough money to do all of them. We do it rotating, so everybody gets flushed every couple of years. We don't know when the last time the valves were exercised. They're now exercised all the time. That becomes very important for water flow and for needs.
That one, general fund budget.
So we're asking to have the town pick up some of the share because of the town use of hydrants in case of a fire. The highway department also uses them to a less extent when they fill the street sweeper, but primarily fire protection.
And the fire department will use those as a water source for fighting fires anywhere in town?
Generally,
Yeah.
they're filling their, even if they're going back and filling their truck up from a hydrant because it's cleaner water, they're usually only using a pond or something when there's a real emergency.
Yeah.
I mean, the last major fire that I recall was when the house in North Avenue burned to the ground. And basically, they ran a shuttle back and forth up Route 16, loading up all the tankers,
Yeah.
moving various communities to the nearest hydrant on 16. But obviously, if you're in a subdivision with a cistern, they can use some of the trucks for, well, the cheapest here, they'll bring it back up, they use the cisterns. But they're gonna be going to the nearest hydrant to fill it up, because that's, the water's there, it's under pressure. And then normally they tell us what, an estimate of what they use, so we can account for it in our water usage, because we're also paying for that water.
So just going through our budget, the first line is my salary. It's 1.25 hours of the 5 hours I get for the water clerk. That's the portion related to the town things. There's a massive decrease. Something happened last year. I think something got scrambled, and there was 24,000 that we didn't need, so most of that will roll over to free cash. The correct amount is what's in there now. The second line is our contracted service for the operator. That's testing, inspections, all that sort of thing.
And again, that's
That's
the
contractual
Catalog
service.
complex well, the senior center well, the library well, and the recreation area well. Those are considered public water supplies. We have to test them every year.
The third line is the actual testing, and this is a big increase. We're asking for another $1,000. You've probably seen this PFAS. It's the polyfluoroalkyl. I don't know exactly what it stands for.
It's an
There
acronym
you
for
go.
polyfluorinated compounds.
The expert.
Yeah.
It's a new regulation from the state. It's basically in a lot of things. Unfortunately, it's in the well for this building. Not at the limit is 20, we're around 10, but we're on monthly testing, and it's a $300 a month test, which is kind of insane. So we're stuck doing that. Hopefully, when the new well is drilled, it'll be a new, deeper well, and it will not have that issue. Otherwise, we're gonna need to look at either a treatment system or putting the whole thing on bottled water, which it basically is anyway, which is why it's kind of strange, but. So hopefully this is a temporary increase. The next line, hydrant fees, those are rental fees for the hydrant paid to Hopedale per contract. That is set, that doesn't change, that's locked into the contracts. And then the last line is our new request for the hydrant expenses. And then I included the account for the meters there.
You say, how long is that contract? Is it just
Which, sorry.
the hydrant?
So the contract with Hopedale is actually up as of December 2021. The rate they charge for the hydrants has been static throughout. Knock on wood, it's not going to be changed.
Trying to, so they installed the hydrants at one time, is that?
Yeah, it's,
I don't understand.
It doesn't matter who installed them.
I'm just trying to understand why we're paying for hydrants.
My recollection was that one or more of them on Bay Street were changed several years ago. I remember,
It really doesn't matter who owns them. It's standard practice. Prior to the town of Milford acquiring the Milford Water Company last December, 3 or 4 months ago, they were paying almost $1 million a year in hydrant rental to the private company. It's what water companies do. In the case of Route 16, when we had the pipe extended in the late 90s due to the pollution from the old gas station at the top of the hill, now Native Motors, even though we had a state grant to put that pipe in, they paid for the hydrants. Because it's Hopedale's line, they took possession and we pay rent. And the line actually that's in Hopedale is owned by them. So it's the way it works.
$250 a hydrant.
So
and
are
I
they
think it's consistent across the contracts, so I'm hoping that that means that they're not gonna change it, because the other contracts are a little more ironclad than this one that's up every 3 years.
Are they responsible for everything since we pay the rental? They're responsible?
No, it's basically the privilege of having the hydrant. We maintain it.
Yeah,
we
just about to say, that
it's-
doesn't include maintenance.
It's a way for them to make money.
So if it gets worn out, or it doesn't work anymore, ultimately, would they be the ones that would have to fix it, replace it?
That's what that 3250 is partially for, is keeping it maintained. Unfortunately, the contract we have with Hopedale is not ideal. It is what it is. We don't really have a lot of other sources for water, and we kind of got backed into a corner.
You have to understand, originally the water was bought from Milford Water Company. We paid Hopedale what they call a wheeling fee. If you know Route 140 on the Mendon-Hopedale line, I believe it's at Howard Street, there was a gate valve and a measure. And in front of the Mutual Mart gas station on the Liquor Road corner, there's another gate valve. When Milford ran into a shortage back in the mid to late 80s, they cut us off. The DEP, state DEP mandated that Hopedale pick us up. And we're at the mercy of Hopedale's contract. Part of the contract calls for us every year to talk to everybody under the sun to see if they will supply us with water. And until recently, any contiguous town has basically said drop dead. There is a glimmer of hope with 1 or 2 towns that we're working on. If we almost had a deal a couple of years ago, but the person introducing it to the town, quite honestly, blew it at the selectmen's meeting by introducing it incorrectly, and it was rejected soundly. We have a glimmer with another town, but we're at Hopedale's mercy for everything. The contract, particularly in the 140 area, is extraordinarily strict. Anybody leaves, we can't replace them. A business wants to come in where a house was, no connection. If a business wants to go, that was allowed under our zoning back in the 80s, such as I have a house, if somebody wants to open a home-based business in my house, they can keep my connection. If I sell my house, somebody wants to tear it down and build a commercial thing, they have to drill a well. And we pay their hires free. It is very tough every time we go to them to ask for anything more. We tend to get shot down. We're at their mercy to pay their fees. The alternative is to take 153 people and say, go drill your own well, and shut the system down.
Some of them are in a contaminated area, aren't they?
Right, or too small.
Only the people on Route 16, the 140 segment, which is where the bulk of about 130 plus or minus of the users are, there's no contamination. However, we have 80-year-old mains that we're just crossing our fingers on every day.
How many people are did you say?
154 connections.
154 connections, about 100.
Like 18 on Milford Street. So that the Route 16 Milford Street, that's direct billed by Hopedale. We have no.
Then we have Dudley Road is part of our system. And then the bulk of the users are on the 140 8th Street segment. That's about 120 something. It is what it is. I mean, the problem with operating a system candidly, it's so small, the costs are high. We don't have our own department. Dan has done unbelievable duty in terms of reading the meters, opening valves himself, finding ways to make do with less.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's
his
beyond
latest
administrative.
thing is he wants to buy the tools where we can flush the hydrants ourselves and he'll do it, we'll get rid of that outside cost. You know, we're doing what we can, our rates are higher. I have people coming to me every day going, well, my neighbor at Hopedale is paying is paying a third of what we're paying, and I go, yeah, because we have to pay Hopedale the uplift, we have to pay for the tools and salary. It is what it is, we try to do the best we can. 3 years ago, we got the town meeting to adopt the enterprise fund, and for the first time in history, it's something I used to scream about back when I first moved into town, it wasn't on the water system, with the exception of the hydrant and the public parts, the wells in the town. We're now an enterprise fund, when the money comes in, we pay out, we have to live with it. We charge our own fee, so for the first time, we're building up the kitty to replace the main without coming to the taxpayers. Even 4 or 5 years ago, the town put up money to replace all the meters because they were outmoded. We won't have to do that ever again. We're self-sufficient in building that reserve up. So when you see that it says we have a profit, it's not a profit, we're building up our own funds. Do that. We had a major leak we just fixed on Talbot Road in December, that just the construction part alone was $6,300. That's coming out of our budget. 6 years ago, we've been asking the town meeting, or you guys, to take that as reserve fund. So we're done about as far as we can in being self-sufficient, you know, given the number of users. Hopefully, if we do connect with another town, they'll give us more gallons. You know, right now, Hopedale takes away every house they can, every opportunity. If a house gets torn down, you know, it's a vacant lot. Nope.
So can I just go over the enterprise fund, because you
Yeah.
touched on that. So basically, the enterprise fund is all the customers. It essentially keeps all that money. It's separate from the general fund, but it's still a budget that gets voted at town meeting. I don't know, Lonnie, if you want to switch to the other budget.
Yep.
Basically, the real short explanation is we're increasing by 0.45% on both the revenue and expense side. It's built to break even. It actually generates a small profit, but on paper, we wrote it so it breaks even. It was just simpler that way. Essentially, our revenue is projected at $224,000, $224,500. Our direct expenses are around $220,000. Indirect expenses are $6,600, and the net is zero. As Kevin mentioned, we've been in good shape. At this point, the current, I guess, balance in the entire fund is, let me find the number, $55,000. So we're projecting, you see that line that says appropriation for retained earnings? That's taking some of that money, bringing it into our budget so it's there if we need it. And if we don't spend it, which hopefully if something doesn't blow up, we wouldn't, and then it just rolls back over. But that gives us the mechanism to, if something breaks.
Am I on the right sheet here?
Yes. Sorry, it's giant.
What's the cost for replacing pipe?
Right now, it's about $350 a foot.
A linear
We
foot?
talked to line pipe, yeah.
Okay, so if any of those old mains go, 350, how much?
$350 a foot. That includes engineering and
A foot.
construction, but up to
So
$300
just
per
imagine
foot.
going from the traffic intersection down the corner of Bates Street on 140 and figure how many feet that is at $350. That's our oldest main. If that needs to be replaced, and we're building the mechanism, so we're self-funding on that. I mean, that's what we're trying to do with the enterprise fund.
Have you done an analysis about, you know, obviously it's very old, and at some point in 10 years, is that, instead of waiting for it to pop?
So that's what's next.
Okay.
We know
So
how
our third
I'm just
commissioner.
curious, and how many years it'll take to get enough reserve to replace a main in
I
that
mean,
size?
I put at the bottom of my report, one of the really promising things that's come out of all this coronavirus mess is all the ARPA funding and the capital funding. That's probably the best chance we are ever going to have to look at, you know, renovations or even potential expansions of this system. I mean, it's astronomical, the cost, if that, you know.
I'm glad you asked, because twice in the last 6 months, we've asked the board, or reminded the board, that the bulk of the ARPA money, once you get rid of the minor uses, is for water and sewer improvement. And we'd love to lay our hands on some of those, some of that money to look at some of this pipe. Fortunately, we got a grant to replace water meters that were, the main meters, we need to replace both of them this year. Fortunately, we got a state earmark last year that we're using that for this fiscal year. If we are able to, the little glimmer of hope I talked about, if we are able to prevail with that, and that's very hush-hush.
Not anymore.
Not naming the town, because the people in the town will rise up and say no, but the officials of the town are very interested. That would involve laying a couple of thousand feet of pipe from that town into this town that would hope to use ARPA money for, if that ever prevailed. But other than that, and the state has ARPA money. What we wanted to do is Mr. Morale helped secure a grant for $150,000 for a water study, and we appreciate that very much for water and sewer. We had also wanted to use some of the ARPA money, and we outlined that to the board a couple of times last year, to do, looking at studies and replacing. I mean, the problem is, you need an engineer to do the cost and replacement analysis. That's money. We don't put it in the budget. We don't have it. We're looking at it. Alan Kent, our chairman, fortunately, has probably spent the last 10 years analyzing that on his own time and has a very good idea of what it would take to do that cost. We know it's, when there was a glimmer we were coming from Upton at one point, we mapped out bringing it from St. Mike's Church to the town border alone was at the order of $1 million with no customers on that. And then bringing it down north to the center of town, and that didn't work out. We have a 10-year-old cost of what it would take to connect to Uxbridge, should they let us. And again, the problem is, especially with climate changing, you go to towns that have water, the officials might be interested because it is revenue for them, and actually giving us water can lower the rates for their users. But the public at large here is you're giving our water to a neighboring town while we have the mandatory shutoffs in the summer, the things, and they don't understand. It's kind of a knee jerk. We spent all this money to get water for our town. Why you want to give it away? And it's not giving it away. But the political expectation is it's very hard to go to another town, even if it makes economic sense for them, when they're confronted by taxpayers going, well, I'm paying this and you made me pay for this thing. I mean, on every quarterly bill we have, Mr. Morale bear this out because he's a customer. Every quarter I'm paying $50 to Hopedale for enhancing their water treatment plant. So I'm paying them $200 a year to enhance their treatment plant, which does benefit me, but it makes my bill a lot higher than if I was with a town that didn't charge that. But that's just the reality of things.
I don't know if there's any other questions. I think that's our budget. So there'll be, the general fund is part of the main budget, and then there'll be a separate warrant article for just the enterprise fund. I think we probably request if we can include this in the FinCom book so people know what they're voting on. You can see it basically has the same categories as our budget: contracted service expenses, the other 3.75 hours for me related to the customers, our receipts.
Okay, thank you. You guys have any other questions for the
No,
water
I
board?
don't.
Anybody, Nick, Mike, you guys got any questions for the water board?
No, it sounds like a daunting process and challenge for them though, so I commend them for their efforts.
Yes. All right, thank you guys so much for coming up.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, assessors are next.
I wanted to say too, thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem.
By the way, if you guys remember, you appointed Vin to our board the last time. His experience in water systems is invaluable to us.
Thank you
It's
very
good
much.
to finally meet you. Thanks for
I got a
stepping
lot of
up.
passion for this. It's
Yeah.
it's a
Well,
challenge.
I'll also be candid and say, just so you know, because he's in the business and he knows the board directors of every town, it's made discussions with them a lot easier because it's one of their own, well, it'll be one of their own.
Right, yeah, so I deal with the regulatory agency.
Yep.
On a weekly basis, all the vendors, and everybody that we have to deal with that vendor.
That's awesome.
I've got a personal relationship with all these people, which is a
Thank you.
benefit, so.
Great.
Kids call. Yeah, so I'm gonna go home, I'll call in, and then my wife.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks for stepping up to take the position as well.
Had nothing to do with my career, we just wanted to check.
All right.
Good evening.
Hi, Gene.
Principal Assessor Jean Berthold here. I prepared the budget and spent it.
Board Chairman Kevin White.
The only line item I will defer to Kevin on is the stipend.
Okay.
Other than that, the line items have been level funded. Even though my mapping costs are going up dramatically. I got a quote this year, $1,455. I was able to negotiate that down to $1,255.
Excellent. Now, is that, is still an increase?
Mapping done. But I also had a meeting with Jack Hunter, and I
Okay.
asked him to recommend to the planning board that they incorporate into the subdivision rules and regulations that digital submissions should be made to the town along with everything else. And that way, the digital submissions go to CMRPC anyway, who is our mapping company.
Okay.
That will decrease the cost of my mapping because he'll already have the,
It's already digitized, right?
it's already
Right, as opposed to
digitized.
them redrawing
So
everything.
it helps with the accuracy and it'll help,
So for instance, that's
increase
the
my mapping costs.
That's the CAD file preparation piece? Is that roughly what the CMRPC needs?
He needs
Have that, they
the,
turn that in with everything else.
yes, the CAD file.
Okay.
Yes, so
When you spin it by paper, basically, we give a copy of that paper.
But the thing is, they create it using CAD,
Yes.
and then they print it in a paper, and if
Yes.
they just
So if
email
they-
the CAD file,
Right,
then
so
we've already got
if
it
they get it with
digitized.
CAD, it's cut and paste.
Right.
So Jack came to me today and told me that he's already spoken to the planning board about it and they're all on board with it.
Yeah, that's
So
a
that
great,
will help
that's a
with
super
that.
great idea.
Yeah, that should have
I'm
happened.
surprised.
Most
I feel like
bigger
we
towns-
feel like that we.
Most larger towns
Well,
require
they're doing, right,
all planning and zoning submissions on CAD. for
Yep.
that reason.
so.
Instead of just the
I'll be
Mylars.
having a hearing and have to go through
a
a
lot of
lot of
places
that
don't even
too,
have those
but they're agreeing
What
to
do you do to
do it.
record?
Yeah.
Okay.
Other than that, like I said, everything else is level funded. I don't know if anybody else wants any explanations on any of the other lines are kind of small, so.
Well, I can speak to that one line request and increase.
Are they, well, let's just see if they're all set. Are you all set on all the other lines? Did you have any questions?
So I recall last year, the travel, training went up significantly last year,
No, it didn't go up.
no, from the year before, I think.
No,
It's been level at least for the last 5 or 6 years.
we've had it at that amount for many, we didn't spend very much of it in the last couple of years because of COVID. So we've been doing a lot of virtual classes instead of traveling
No, I'm not looking at the meeting and dues went up last year, quite a bit, the previous year. I was just wondering if that was adequate.
It's, yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is adequate, right.
Although we'll point out it's necessary, the amount of law changes coming down every year that we need to keep up are staggering. It just, they're throwing the, DOR's throwing the kitchen sink at us, and we gotta keep up with it.
But we do, again, a lot of times they're able to have virtual meetings, which are a lot less expensive than having to travel and go
That was
to
the.
in-house meetings.
Yeah, we are fortunate that even when we're in person, with the exception of one meeting a year, they are all what I call commutable. You can drive back and forth to the meeting if they're multi-day.
I don't have any additional questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you want to ask questions about the stipend increase?
Yes.
Went from 800 to 1,500?
All right, one of the members who can't be here tonight, I voted to go along with putting in the budget because another member wanted to discuss it. I will make his arguments for him since he can't be here since late night working in his town hall. just felt with the amount of training necessary to keep up with everything, and to know everything, felt the stipend should be raised to recognize the fact that we're the only board required to go mandatory training. If we don't complete our mandatory training by 20 months onto the board, we are automatic, as elected officials, we are automatically kicked off the board when the year one. So because of that, and it's mandatory, the board member felt that we should receive a higher stipend. And that was his argument.
So all three of you get a stipend right now? 3 members of the planning board, of the assessors?
Yes.
What do I get, $50 more than that? Is it 200, 250?
It's 200, 200, 300.
And 300. Yeah, the chairman gets more. Way back when we did the data collection ourselves, there was one lump sum fee of $7,500 to split it 3 ways. And what we did over time, as we all were working, is we shifted that to outsourcing and lowered us to this minimum. And Mr. O'Brien would like it raised a little higher, recognizing the...
So what is it? It says 1,500 is requested, so that's 500 each?
Yes.
So it's going from 200 for the, 300 for the chairman to 500 and 200 to 500 for the other two.
But they may be getting 250 at this point.
Yeah, being perfectly honest, I'm totally neutral on the request. He wanted to bring it forward, so there were only 2 of us at that meeting. I have no problem with him doing it, so I voted to say, yeah, go present it. He can't be here due to his work schedule, so that was his argument.
And how many hours a year do you have to take in training? That isn't that isn't for your job, it is specific to what you do as an assessor.
That initial training is 40 hours plus an exam.
And then after that?
After that, the training is optional, but...
It's optional.
It's optional, but it's, I would say it's necessary. Gene has to
I take
undergo it.
training all the time.
Right, but that's not, right, what I'm
Right.
talking about, I'm asking, especially for everybody who's watching to understand, the request is essentially going from 200
Yes.
a year to 500 a year.
Which is
for a
why I
whole
said I'm
year.
very neutral on it.
Right, but to go from
Because-
200 a year to 500 a year,
Yes.
you're saying you need 40 hours of training, you have to take a test within the first 20 months of being elected.
And that is all, that is all the training by law you need once elected assessor.
Can you tell me how many hours, and I know both you and Mr. O'Brien are assessors in other towns.
And accredited like Gene is.
Right, so you have to do that, I'm assuming, for your full-time
Yeah,
job.
the bulk of the training for our full-time jobs does not relate to district wise.
Okay, so how many hours a year do you spend for the training related to your particular role as an elected official in Mendon?
Once you take that 40-hour course and exam, none.
Okay. I know that it's not required, but do you take any additional training
I take, personally,
for this role?
before I was an assessor, that is a working assessor.
I'm not
not a
asking
board
for
member.
your assessment.
No, what I'm telling you is, prior to me being employed as an assessor
Yes.
in any capacity, but being just a board member, I would attend all the local association trainings 3 times a year.
Okay, so how many
And the
hours,
service
how many hours?
And
Per
that would
session.
be probably about another 80 hours a year.
We have designations, so this is a very
Yeah.
unusual case in that you have 2 of your
Right.
elected assessors that actually
And I
have
get that, and
designations.
that's why I'm asking the
In order
specific
to
question.
In order to maintain their designations, they have to have so many points. It's not
Right, but that's,
based on
but
an
that's
hourly
for their
training.
full-time job, has nothing to do with their role here.
Well,
And I'm not,
okay.
and I'm not arguing.
Right.
What I'm
Okay.
trying to do is make it clear to everybody.
Yes.
Somebody, the idea is to go from 200 or 300 a year to 500 a year, which I'm just, what's the justification for it? And you're
Okay.
telling me that you don't have to, but you do take some additional training.
What I would tell you, Mike, in all candor,
Yep.
if someone were to run this year and win, in addition to that mandatory 40-hour course, I don't think they could really understand the job without taking at least another 20 to 30 hours staggered throughout the year of thing solely because of the law changes. What you'd be doing is saying, Gene would say to the board, well, that's it, and you go,
So is
and
it,
not no.
so is it 25, approximately 25 hours a year for legal updates?
I
Is
would
that
say
fair to
so.
say?
Yes,
Okay.
legal and other updates, law changes,
So it's 25 hours a year.
yeah.
And you're saying that's recently you've had to increase because of law changes and requirements within the.
I could give you a concrete example.
Oh, we always have changes in
Yeah.
our training.
That's the question, that's the only question I had, was the
Well,
justification for going from 200 or
Yes.
250 or 300 to 500 each.
And I'll just give you a concrete example. We have an awful lot of farmland property in this town, chapter 61A.
Mhm.
There is a major law change to 61A pending in the state legislature, that because of the fact the Senate Chairman of Ways and Means is pushing it, is likely to pass. Just to figure out how to evaluate that is probably going to be a day's worth of training for every assessor in the state. And I make board members too. Because it's major league changes in that law.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Any questions from the FinCom?
Thank you, folks.
Any questions from the folks at home? Nope.
Just by the way, I'd like to point out, in a year where you had major valuation changes, we've had one abatement request. That's the level of confidence people have in the current principal assessor and the board. That is major league success. And Holliston has 38. Now, Uxbridge has an equal number, one in this town. That means people are, they may not like it, but they're not challenging the valuations.
So thank you very much.
Arch building plan,
Yeah.
yes or no?
Just, now that we've got most of the FinCom members here that weren't here when we first talked about it, can we just circle back to the Gary and Helen thing real quick? For the folks at home too, Nick and Mike. So, I'll try to be brief, just in the essence of time. So we have
The records room?
the board voted, let me get the right people. So the board had voted a little bit earlier to proceed with a quote from, what the heck is it?
Gary and Helen
Yeah.
for $11,000 to do a site plan review and other associated tasks with the record room. That little brick building up here on the left on Main Street, it's between Lowell and Bikino's property. Yeah, sorry, I get turned around, right? I'm not used to being on this side of the table, see, that's what it is. But between Mark Bikino's and the Lowell's property, there's a record room. And the site plan says that the town actually owns the land in front of the record room and doesn't own the land the record room is on. So whatever we want to do, whether it's to sell it or to get a grant to renovate it or anything else, we need to have this work done. And the estimate is professional services. We don't need to go out for quotes, but we got an $11,000 quote from a obviously very reputable firm. And we have a grant that we want to apply for that we have to have this documentation for. Now, it does say there is something in here about, this is dated February 1st, and they say they'll get started with it in a month. So
Sorry, I can speak to that piece of it. So he said if we approved it, they would get started on it, and they would have it in a couple of weeks done for us, so that we'd be able to have the extra time for those couple weeks to get the grant done, that the other engineering company needs for this, so.
So the specific thing is $11,000. I think the appropriate source for this that we've done in the past is FinCom Reserve, and you have 58,000 this year in FinCom Reserve, and the majority of the members of the FinCom could authorize a vote here to expend that now, so that we can get started on it. And we voted to approve it up to $11,000 pending your approval. So that's where we're at.
I don't really have a background, so the land is not owned by the town.
So herein lies the confusion, right? Let me pull this map back up real quick. So here's the records room here.
Yep.
And the plan was to go to meet with the Lowells, so we were under the impression that the lot line for this building was up against the edge of the building, right? And that there was zero lot line, so there was no room for us to even put a French drain in, to be able to do some of the work that's required for the engineering, maybe put in a tight tank so we could put a bathroom in there. We don't have any running water at this point, so those are all niceties that we're trying to get down the road. But when we got to this point to talk to the Lowells to say, hey, could we purchase maybe a little bit of the land here, it showed that the lot is actually here on our assessor's maps, and they said, well, these lot lines don't match up either for the properties that they own that abut. So we said, all right, we need to have this surveyed, because again, as the assessors were just speaking to the fact that, new subdivisions will send you the CAD file, or they're gonna request the CAD files now, so that they're right on our assessor's map. We have an area downtown that's never, hasn't changed hands in a very, very long time, so the maps are just not correct. So that's what this will allow us to do, to get the correct maps, then work with the Lowells to see what we can do but we don't even know where the property is at this point.
I mean, I think that records room is over 100 years old, right?
1825.
Yeah, so we're at 200.
200, yeah.
Almost 200.
Almost, right, it's almost 200 years it's been there, so I don't believe it's moved.
So again, I think the request is to the Finance Committee, and it's up to you guys if you would like to vote on it, that we would use the FinCom reserve to pay this bill. Again, time is of the essence, and that's the only reason we're looking to go there, or we would probably look at other sources because we have to have the grant in next month. And this, we didn't know that this was going to sneak up on us.
And what does the grant cover, I guess?
Kathy?
So we are doing the Mass Preservation Project Fund grant, Cycle 28, and we did it for the town hall several years ago. So the grant will cover as much as we can. I think we're going to go to the cap on it. We're hoping to secure the foundation and put in a French drain, the water. There's
So all
water
the
in the
improvements
basement. Yeah. It's in really rough shape. The floor is sagging. We've got tremendous water damage in that building, so we'd like to keep it standing for now. So.
Is there anything that, the 11,000 with the firm that's doing it, are they gonna actually, is it more than engineering as far as lot lines, or do we already know that?
So they're gonna do an existing condition plans, property line staking, preparation of the 81X plan, and also they'll give us the CAD file to be able to give, so that we can update our town maps.
This is Nick. I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I've heard everything from, we're gonna survey it to sell it, to putting in septic and water and bathrooms. So it seems like we're all over the board about exactly the potential use going forward of the property. And I am on the steering committee for the master plan, and I'm not sure if this, I don't remember this kind of property being part of that discussion as of yet, but maybe Kathy can refresh my memory if it has, and I might have missed some meetings. But just trying to understand kind of what's the plan for the use of the property going forward. Is it to sell? Is it to renovate? And do we have any potential estimate as to what the total cost would be if we were to renovate?
So we are not sure. This is a discussion that's been had between, over several years, what happens to this building. The Historical Commission, because, we feel responsible for the well-being of this building, have stepped in and said, all right, well, we know something has to happen. And we also know that, it's coming up to an emergency state with the foundation compromised. So it is really going to be up to the town as to what it would want to do with the building, whether they use it or whether or not they decide to sell it. It can be sold with a septic plan, that we are getting through the engineer and, the specs for the well. I mean, it's really going to be up to the town to decide what happens to this building. We would just like to keep it standing at this point It is in the local historic district. It's one of the older and more historically significant structures in town. Its sister building is on Founder's Park, and they were both buildings that were built by Seth Hastings, who is a prominent lawyer and congressman. So, I mean, I think we can make that determination as we, you know, get further down the road. I think right now it's most important because for 13, 14, 15 years, we've just been trying to pump water out of the basement, and it's a waste.
I'd have to say too, that in a perfect world, the town would keep it and use it for some sort of community use and hopefully expand on the property. That's really the path we were heading when we ran into this roadblock, so that's just where we're at.
It's really a lovely building. It still has fireproof boxes inside that were, you know, bricked in, along with a safe. You know, a lot of the original, you know, woodwork is, you know, was original to the building. And we also own, you know, we have Seth Hastings Law Library from 1825 in our possession. So, I mean, it's a significant structure. Small, but significant.
But no matter what we do, this is the first step. We have to do this.
Yeah.
That's the issue. And I have to say, Kathy, you're an optimist to say that's a lovely building.
It is.
Jack, you got any questions? Mike, you've been probably privy to this already, but. You guys have a question?
I would say, like, we can, you know, if somebody wants to see it, let us know, I can show them. It's a cool building inside.
It is.
Go ahead, Mike.
I know it is.
I believe the CPA voted to put some money towards that engineering.
Yep, so when we were talking about that earlier, Mike, we've actually capped out the administrative funds for that spot at this point, based on the engineering that we've already done with the engineering plans for the building. So we're looking at a different source now. Sorry.
And Mike, we'll be coming back to the CPA. If we get this grant, we will ask CPA funds to do a matching 50-50 with us. Or with the state, excuse me.
Good.
Anybody have any other questions on that?
Taking off mute.
Is that something that you guys wanted to vote now, or do you want to wait?
I so move we spend 11 grand, was it,
Yeah, up to 11,000.
for this historical building,
For the engineering?
for the engineering?
Any discussion? Guys all good?
Is any discussion on that? Mike's asking, I know sometimes it's hard to hear, there was a motion to expend this from the FinCom reserve, and it was seconded. Do you guys, anybody have any other discussion on it?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
You guys are,
Jack, this is Jack. I just have to abstain. Folks, I had to step away at a family thing I had to deal with. I apologize, so I missed a portion of the discussion. I'm just going to abstain, okay?
okay.
Thank you, Jack.
Nick?
Thank you.
Nick?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Okay.
So moved.
Thanks for taking that out of order, guys. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
no,
And
that's-
thank you for all the detailed information, Kathy.
Thank you. Someday we'll all go down there.
Yeah, no, I know, we can have we should have it ready for the block party.
Block party.
Oh, we can definitely, let's put a can out front.
Donations. That's the beer house?
All right, Parks Department?
I can share this time, I don't prepare this time.
Okay, but, let me just turn off this sharing.
I'll see what happens, I just override it.
Is that you?
Yep,
Got it.
and also, so, if you don't know me, I'm Dan Byer, I'm the Director of Parks and Rec. One of our Parks Commissioners, Tom Belland, I believe, is on the remote meeting. I didn't see AJ.
I can see who's there.
So here, this is our budget request. I guess I'll just quickly go through. I'm going to skip the first item, maintenance wages, because that's a bigger discussion that ties into some later stuff. We're requested, so lifeguard wages, we're asking for a $500 increase. This is because minimum wage, it went up to $13.75 to $14.50. There's one more increase next year to $15, and then this should level out. We are working to rebuild our programs for the beach. One of the things we struggle with is lifeguards. So it's possible we'll have to relook at this line again to remain competitive. I will say, if anybody needs a summer job, you get certified as a lifeguard, it's a guaranteed job pretty much anywhere. The state's hiring left and right. So that, most of this doesn't change. Sanitary, this is the tight tank pumping at the town beach. There's an increase here just because the costs are rising for the disposal. Lights, fuel, supplies, and then in this is a typo. It says rec account, recreation account, that's level funded. It's supposed to be site improvements. We're asking for an increase of $1,000. At one point, this line was $4,000. It was cut when we made the major cuts in 2011. This is what we use for small improvements. Unfortunately, the last few years, it's been tree removal and more tree removal. So we're just looking to bring this up. Especially as we've got the new library, the new police station. There's a lot of costs. So then, to circle back, the main increase we're asking for is maintenance wages. This is the seasonal maintenance crew. We're looking for an increase of $4,500. I won't read you the whole thing, but we've been really struggling trying to keep up with maintenance. I'm the only full-time employee. I'm spending 15 hours a week in the spring and the fall out mowing lawns because the kids don't come until basically June, July, August, and that's it. So we're looking to create still a part-time, but more of a maintenance foreman position that could work part-time in the spring, run the crew in the summer, and stay on in the fall through September, November, which would then free me up to focus on some other higher level projects. So we planned this out. It would be the one foreman position and 3 more kids underneath just in the summer. I don't know if we'll find anybody, but we've got to try and do something. I will say, I think at some point we're going to need to talk about this becoming a full-time position. Again, as things increase, new library, new police station, this whole campus, there's just more and more demand.
For grounds maintenance.
For grounds maintenance, mowing, weeding. We basically do nothing with the flower beds. That's all, she left Kathy Schofield and Mazar, volunteers, the memorials.
If I can ask, so this requested total recreation, $107,335, which is an increase of $7,138. This has nothing to do with the revolving fund that we established a few years ago, right?
Correct. So the revolving fund, so Parks has a weird thing. The town beach, the swim lessons come out of the general fund. The revolving fund is our summer program and the concessions and field use. And it's really intended because of the cash flow.
Right.
So that account, let me find, I think.
And we talked about a cap on that, how much could come out of it and how much could stay in it year to year. What are those numbers?
So the current, I forget where we're at. I think the spending cap is $150,000. I haven't actually sat down and figured out what we'll request in the warrant.
But wasn't there a maximum amount that could be in the account, and then any overage, if there was, could be moved over into free cash or not?
Let me pull up our annual report because I did all the numbers in this. Sorry, give me a second. So we changed, our previous revolving account was capped at $10,000 a year, and anything over $10,000 would goes into free cash, which basically we lose it. The rec program has blown up. Last year our annual revenue is $150,000. We get almost 100 kids a week. Our payroll is easily $10,000 a week. And so the goal was to change the type of account to allow us to, again, similar to the discussion with water, retain some money
Yeah, for cash flow.
for small improvements, things where, this snack shack needs a new roof, needs a new floor, things like that. So the new account has no balance cap, but we can only spend, I believe it's currently $150,000 a year. So looking at FY '20, which is what's in the annual report, our total income was $161,000. Our total payroll was $79,000, expense was $69,000. So we started at 42, we ended at 56, our effective profit was $13,000. I can tell you, as of February 2020, the balance in the account is $32,000. And I will say, from that account, we spent $24,000 on the beach, fields, equipment, facilities. Basically, every penny in profit is getting dumped right back into the facility. But it doesn't pay for the maintenance, the guys to mow the lawn, the buildings and stuff.
So that's an upkeep in capital, and this money is really what it costs to just run the program from year to year.
Yeah, this again, so new floor in the snack shack, new roof on the snack shack.
Is from the revolving fund.
That's coming from the revolving fund. Those kind of small capital projects, if you will. It's like we're going to be coming back for the town beach with CPA for potentially $100,000 request for a major renovation. That's a massive project. That's not something we're able to fund at this point. But a lot of these smaller things.
Can we go back to the maintenance position for a minute?
Yes.
How many hours is that? When is that exactly?
So, the current budget covers 4 seasonal employees at an average of $15 an hour for 40 hours a week for 13 weeks.
Okay.
What we're changing to is a single foreman, somewhere around 20 to 22 an hour. They're going to do 2 to 3 days a week in the off season, up to 5 days in the summer, for a total of 29 weeks. And then we're going to bring on 2 more part-timers in the summer for the 12-ish weeks. It's basically taking one of those people and stretching them out a little bit.
So, my question on that, are we getting anywhere near a point where we need to increase, like you're saying now, because it needs to become maybe a whole nother group of people or department or full-time position? Are we at a point where, looking at the cost of that, of equipment that we need, the maintenance of that equipment, is field maintenance part of that same thing too? Or is that just like, to fix the ball fields or something like that?
No, so the field maintenance line is basically 50% of the fertilizer cost on the fields, that's it. 50% from the town and 50% from revolving, which again is that idea that the public use of the fields versus the group's use of the fields. I will say, we did get a quote to outsource all of our maintenance. It was $276,000, so that is not happening.
200, so what, apples to apples?
Yeah, so we maintain, where did I summarize everything? It's 18 and a half acres, 5 parks, 8 buildings, 7 cemeteries, 15 islands, and 5 monuments. And that's today, that's not anything new. So it's almost weekly mowing, leaf cleanup, weeding, trimming, all the ball fields, the new library.
What, do you have that quote somewhere?
I can.
If you could send it, I'd just like to.
Yeah.
That's all.
We put out.
Back to this again.
Yeah.
So I just want to be clear. So it's 2 to 3 days a week, most of the year, and then 5 days during the summer.
Yeah, it does not ever average above what would trigger a full-time position. I have that somewhere.
Well, 19 hours is what triggers a full-time position.
Well, you're right. So it's what, for the town, I thought it was treated as an average.
Right, you can't work more than 19 hours a week over a calendar year, or you become a full-time
All right,
position.
So we don't want to hit that.
But my question is, who's going to do this type of job? Who do you have in mind that you think would?
Well, so again, I'm hesitant to get into that too much in the meeting. There is a potential former employee of the town who might be interested in a part-time job like this.
Okay.
We have a few leads. I've been talking to Alan, has some ideas.
And
our idea was to basically post this job and see what we get. I mean, we do have kids returning this summer. This isn't a crisis yet, but we've got to, I mean, everything looks like crap, basically. And
So this isn't a temporary job, though. It's a permanent part-time position added to the town.
Our intent was to treat this as a seasonal position, as in through the parks. It's not a new employee of the town. But I guess that's a good point. I need to go back and look at the total average over the calendar year and make sure we're not hitting that benefit, because that
Right,
would be
well,
an expense.
I don't
Maybe we
know.
have to come back and
I don't
talk
know
about
how you wouldn't hit it unless you,
And I think the important point is, at least for planning purpose, it is what it is.
right,
I mean, if what we need
right.
is
Full-time
Yeah,
person.
is a full-time person to do
Well-
this, because like you said, there's a lot of things that aren't getting done.
I'm worried just based on the plan because you're taking a number of part-time people, which are typically more flexible based upon the type of coverage we need during whichever part of the year, probably harder to maintain, to keep, and replacing it with one person, which you're already having enough time as the one person doing that. So, and I also wonder too, if, we've been over this before, whether if this is maintenance, if it belongs in parks or if it belongs over at the highway. And so, or some combination of the two, and if there's room there as we consider staffing changes over there, that we should be putting them together with.
The full-time position over there, and then supplement it through parks in the busy
Well,
season.
I mean, I don't want to go back too far in the history, but, you know, we did add a half position to highway.
It's supposed to be 50/50.
Which was supposed to be mechanic in half, and then we basically were outsourcing our mechanic work, and then they agreed to a half position, and then they kept it, even though we outsourced the work based upon need. So in concept, there is a half position there, but we're gonna have some changes over in that department too, which may change the skill sets of the employees that we have come in. So if we're going to consider something based upon need, which I agree exists, we should look at different options. I don't know that a seasonal position
Well, so
makes
it's
sense.
17 hours, 17.8, so it would not
I-
cross, so that's obviously, I mean, I think that's a good point, and we've had that discussion with parks about future changes. At one point, there was a split between parks and highway, and
Right.
to be honest, it just didn't work.
Right.
It was,
I mean,
who do they work for, or it
Yeah.
was,
Because truthfully, neither you nor Lonnie should have to be coming in to fix a thing that's broken in your free time, right? So like if it's in this building or if it's somewhere else, I'm not saying mowing the grass, I'm saying you guys are frequently coming in and
Maintenance.
doing small maintenance things to make progress.
Well,
And
yeah.
you're doing that
I mean,
now.
that's a much higher level, I mean, I'm talking about a guy or a person to mow lawns.
Me too, I'm talking
That's a
about,
higher
I'm
level,
talking
I
about
mean,
maintenance,
and-
custodian,
Right, I mean,
basically.
you're basically-
Changing the light bulbs, changing out the door locks so you don't have to keep doing it.
Right, well, personally, I mean, for me, I think it makes more sense to have me handling some of those higher level tasks and outsourcing some of the menial stuff, so I'm not the one on the mower.
Correct.
Not so much custodial, but
But for budgeting purposes, are we talking about that in this current budget? Is that what that increase
Well,
is
it's
with what's
what he-
there,
he
or?
has, what he's included here is the 17 hours a week position. What I'm saying, it's probably most likely an actual part-time position that's being created, which makes sense. I would like to see where it fits in the whole spec. I mean, if he
Yeah.
needs 17 hours, I'm pretty sure there's 2 more hours somewhere of maintenance work that a part-time person is doing, either at highway or somewhere else.
we could, 30 hours is what would be beautiful, and bring on, basically bring on somebody who works underneath me that handles some of the more day-to-day stuff in terms of maintenance, and like what you're talking about, I'm sure Alan shoveling sidewalks, things like that those guys are
But
scrambling.
how much of this $7,138 increase in this subtotal recreation budget, how much of that goes towards this position?
So I think your number, I think there's a mistake,
different one?
something missing in the budget, it's 9,000, but I'm asking for $4,500.
What's that?
4,500 is the answer.
Right, I see that number on A1
Yeah,
salaries.
that's it.
So how many hours does that get you?
That gets us, so right now, we have $30,000. It pays for four employees to work 13 weeks, 40 hours a week.
That you manage.
that I oversee, they're basically high school and college kids.
Yep.
This 4,500 would let us essentially get rid of two of those, create a single part-timer that would have a more expanded season, and then still bring on basically 2 kids in the summer to help back them up when things get busy.
And does that process or that plan allow you to deal with all the flower beds and all the parks and all the cemeteries and everything that is not getting done now that needs to be done?
I think this is a step forward. It would let us from the grounds maintenance, I think, yes, you'd have somebody paying attention, somebody that I can say, hey, I need you to go out and weed the flower bed.
And it doesn't hit that full-time position threshold, or you think it is going to?
I think it will.
I don't know how it doesn't.
Which is fine, but like I said, because Dan is doing most of this himself, and I know there's problems in the past with reliability based upon who he can get in the summer, and whether we even want to trust those people to be using the equipment sometimes, that's a real concern, so he usually steps up and fills in because it's just easier all around, right, than worrying about those things. If we're trying to work towards a goal of freeing him up from doing some of that stuff, then we should do that.
So what I'm getting at, I'm sorry, what I'm getting at is this the right number, based on your concerns, Kim, about?
No, I think it's probably more. I think if you were asking me about what I think the layout should be, I think it should be like parks and facilities manager, right? I think Dan should, and then we should have part-time people in these other positions. He should be hiring somebody competent basically to run the summer camp, but he still handles the hiring, the firing, and all of the discipline that goes, the joys of that. And he should be having one competent part-time person potentially that does the maintenance stuff that he can't get to.
So what should that $4,500?
I don't know, without having a look at it.
Well, so the rec program is all set. We do have somebody that comes in, they run the rec program. I basically keep an eye on the beach and the shack. It's the maintenance that's kind of the thorn.
Right.
So I think, you make a good point that maybe it shouldn't be 45, maybe we should, if we could hire a 20-hour position,
So can we circle
benefits would
back
let
to
you
it
bring in somebody.
before?
Yeah,
If I may interject.
Yes, go right ahead.
Tom Bellman, 34 Crestview Drive. What we're looking at, and there was some really good points made here, is quality over quantity. And what we need is better supervision, have them do a better job in the parks and cemeteries and other areas. And we just feel that we need that person that is responsible, that can, has good training, that know landscaping. Whether $20 or $22 an hour will cut it, I guess that's the question people are debating at this point, that it might have to be a little bit more. So again, all good points, but I just wanted to let you know that was our discussion in parks, was keeping an eye on things and having some responsible people in the right positions in the right places.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tommy.
Dan, I was looking at your spreadsheet. Yeah, that's great, thanks.
Yeah.
And over the last 6 years, your budget has only gone up 13% in 6 years. I think it's time that.
Yeah, the backstory is you had Dick Joyner, and he was in a unique position. He was retired from the state, he had a pension, he worked April to October, they could lay him off, and everything was great. That's like a needle in a haystack to find somebody like that.
So I think that, and just to what you're saying about somebody that, even if it is a full-time position, you're talking about the highway department, like I don't know the logistics, the half person, whatever all that may be, but even in the wintertime, right, look how hard hard of a time they're having right now getting the plow drivers that we would outsource with just the trucks, right? So another person that can work maybe between both, in the summertime, flow back over here with Dan. In the wintertime, maybe he's doing some plowing and stuff, but in that other difference in time, there's still other maintenance things that need to go on in the winter too, that person may be able to kind of float between parts. But again, I think that you're right. There has to be a determination of that person's under this realm, and then, hey, there's a snowstorm coming up. go ahead and plow for a couple of days, and then if it's the overtime, then, take a couple of days, whatever, however it may
I wouldn't
work.
say, maybe not plowing, but maybe working the track less.
Something, anything.
Right.
Snow blowing,
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a laundry list, I mean.
I mean, I appreciate the attempt to be creative and keep it cost-effective, but I'd like to find a long-term solution to this problem, and I think post-COVID, I think camps and things are gonna boom, and I think you're gonna have your hands full, and I think your attention needs to be on that in the summer if it can be, and so I'm all for changing the structure of how that gets done.
So maybe a better question, is there a number that's reasonable that parks could go back and try and design something and discuss,
I think you need to figure out, I think the first step is to figure out how many hours, and you need to come up with a number, or you and Kim need to come up with a number.
Right, I think it's, deciding if we need a part-time position, does the town need a part-time position in order to cover these maintenance issues on its properties? Sounds like potentially yes. We know we need somebody doing odd jobs also. That's been a fact for a couple of years. And then how does that affect your current position and what you're doing? Right? And what does that mean? I think you're looking at a part-time position that's in parks, it's parks and facilities. And I think that you are in charge of that person. But I do think it's a part-time position. Now, if a person, let's put it this way, we never create a position for a person, right? Let's just say any candidate in mind. If you happen to find out we post a position for 19 hours with benefits, which is what it would be, and you happen to find a person who's great but really only wants to work 17 or their schedule because they're retired or whatever, we consider it, right? Whenever an applicant comes in, we listen to all the scenarios. So I'm just saying budget-wise, we would have to budget for both. And I don't think, like you said, it's only $20 an hour, so I don't think that's that much of a swing in this budget.
Right.
So I think it's doable.
And, I would like to open me up to do a little more with, at some point I could get certified as a water operator, and I can do more with water at a higher level.
Yeah, we'd have to agree that water is part of facilities in order for that to be true.
So I think for this exercise then, and for the budget, shall we adjust this number to include a part-time person at $20 an hour? Should we have that, should we put in that in his line item?
I think so.
So there's an issue, I'm not sure if we want to get into it right now.
What's that?
We maybe need to talk about the rate of that position as it compares to other rates.
So, all right, then before we even discuss that.
Maintenance one? Well, that would be based upon whatever highway is at the low step, basically.
Let's.
We take it offline and come back.
All right, but all we need to simply do is whatever that number is, let's just get it in the budget
Right,
so that we have it, so we're looking at the budget correctly, okay? Instead of, I don't, want let's move that 45 if it's whatever the number
I'm not looking
is.
at them to have a CDL and multiple things. I'm saying we're talking about a part-time custodian maintenance person, right?
Actually, so Lonnie, so I use $20 an hour for 17 hours a week. I have to figure out what the total is, but actually that's what's built in right now, but it's essentially 17 hours a week.
52 weeks, that's 17,680.
However, for parks in the summer, it's 40 hours a week with those guys, for at least-
But those numbers are already in there, right?
I took this and divided by 52 weeks, so we have to go back to the drawing boards and do some math that we're probably not gonna do tonight.
All right, so let's get that ready, and maybe we can add this back.
We'll do parks on the back end again.
Okay.
We'll add
Yeah,
it to
we'll
another-
get some numbers together and then come back and we'll do it at whatever the last one is, we'll throw it in again that night. Is that all right with everybody?
When is your last, just because I have a difficult time on Wednesdays.
We're gonna be wrapped up by St. Patrick's Day. We have to have the budget done by then. So, you can, 2 weeks from now, come back. I'm not sure
And
what's
if the
scheduled for
numbers
that
are-
night.
I can't be here 2 weeks from now.
That's all right.
Well, then,
If,
2
hold
weeks.
on, if you,
One more 2 weeks out.
can if you get the numbers and work with Kim, and
Put them in the budget.
Kim can also present that part of it, it's not like.
You don't have to be
nobody
here again.
understands
We know.
what we're getting to.
We know the philosophy of it now, it's just doing the numbers, and Kim certainly can.
I do have one other parks thing.
Yep.
That's more of just a longer
Hold on,
term capital.
before you move on, is there anybody at home that has any questions about what we've discussed so far?
Good, thank you.
Okay, thanks, all right, sorry.
The other issue that's coming up with parks is we really need a home for maintenance. Currently, we are storing all of our equipment in the Morrison Drive Police Shell. We were at Highway. During COVID, we moved over. They really don't have the space for us. I mean, COVID was the excuse, but, you know, the plows, the trackless, they're running out of room.
Any space up off of Inman Hill in those buildings?
No. Inman Hill, it holds the plows in the summer and all the summer stuff in the winter, and it's really remote. So
Yep, that's
we're
true.
using Morrison Drive. I do know the select board just issued an RFP. We've also been looking at what it would cost to build a new building up behind the bathrooms in the park. There's land there. You know, I think our goal is to try and come up with a couple different options. You know, and I think they each have pros and cons, but it's just something we want to make everyone aware of, that this is a pressing need. We've
Is
got
the-
truck
is-
and trailer mowers that.
Is the shell big enough to keep everything in it?
The shell works. It would, I mean, it needs some work. I think the number, the rough number we're coming up with is around $150,000. I mean, it
To
has
build a
dirt-
building?
No, the slab, or the Morrison Drive.
150,000 to update that to
Has
keep
no,
it good?
no electricity. You'd have to
Yeah,
finish
right.
the plumbing,
Yep.
finish the septic, pour a slab. I think we got a price on a garage at the park. It was 160. It's probably close to 200 now.
So that's for a metal building?
Like a 60 by 30, yeah, modular prefab type garage.
Yep. Does that include electricity and everything that you would need in it?
Well, so that, the advantage up there is you've got an existing water, sewer, electric, you
Yep.
just have to tie in.
Sure.
The advantage to Morrison Drive is it abuts a whole bunch of land that's in chapter land that could be future fields in 20 years.
Well,
It's
yeah,
40
I-
acres of land right next to it.
So, okay,
It's, you know, so it's not something we need to decide tonight, we just wanted to bring it up. I think at some point, we'd like to talk to the board, you know, maybe when the responses come in from the RFP and you know what the options are for Morrison Drive, you know. I mean, it could be worth a fortune, and that's a different discussion.
Yeah, I think we're going to get a lot of interest on Morrison
Yeah.
Drive, based on what I'm hearing. So I would really be interested in alternatives,
but well,
solutions.
if we sell
but-
Morrison Drive and get, and it's a decent amount of money, we could also use that to build a building.
Exactly, and that was our thought, is to come with, say, option A, B, C. We're not attached to one of them, but we need to do something.
Well, I don't think that $150,000 is really outrageous.
Even if you call it 200.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you call it $200,000, to even if we looked at, when you say a modular
Location,
building, what, like
where's
GBI
the
or the
location?
steel building?
Tom would know more if he got the price. It was a,
It's a GBI, and it's not a steel building, it's a wood structure.
Yep.
They prefab a lot of the panels. That includes foundation work, tree work, site work. The structure itself, garage doors, everything else. That was the 166. I want to say we got that price 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
So it's close to 200, like Dan said, at this point.
Where were you thinking?
that would go like right behind the bathrooms up at the park. So we own all that land going back to the dealerships, all those
That
woods.
seems like a no-brainer.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's-
Besides the cost, seems
it's
like a good
convenient.
location.
It saves us some other logistical things. The only thing you get at Morrison Drive and you don't get is potential future access, which again, that's the future. You know,
So-
10, 20 years, and it's private land, so we don't own it now.
While we're talking about this, you had you said $100,000 for the beach, but you still have an article from 2014 all I have here says town beach article, $40,000.
So that is for some ADA work
Okay,
that it stalled out. It was for paving walkways, making them accessible, some parking spaces.
but maybe you could pull it and repurpose
We
it.
do need to do some of that. I mean, again,
Right,
maybe we could
like-
talk offline about that one.
Yeah, for this town, if you're really gonna move forward with something, if we're considering something, I think.
I mean, for the beach, we're working on a major renovation. That'll be a separate request for CPA funds for that. Maybe if that 40,000, we can make some transfer, but CPA funds cannot be used at all towards this maintenance building.
Okay.
That's not an allowable expense. You can't build buildings and parks with CPA.
No, and again, I think that also too, and again, I'd be curious just to see the plans too, that, and how big of it is. If we're going to do something, and it needs to be a little bit bigger, let's
Oh,
do
yeah.
it now. If
Yes.
it needs another door at the other end so you can drive straight through, like, all those kind of things to keep in mind, that let's do, if we're gonna do it, let's do it right,
I agree, I think.
I feel.
Okay.
Any other questions for Parks?
Yeah, so it sounds like we have a lot of park stuff to come back to.
Yep.
So Dan, we have another meeting 2 weeks after that. Hold on. I think that's our last one for recaps,
When is that, the 16th?
if it's 2 weeks after that. Hold
I
on.
don't know. It's a bad time of year for me because I get a lot of shows,
Hey,
so.
I can't get my calendar to open. Here we go.
You said it was the 2nd, that's probably the 16th.
Yeah, so it's, right, it's probably the,
16th would be.
yeah,
much-
but that would be, so next meeting, so actually, oh yeah, so next, the 2nd is actually, I have scheduled to be the catch-all, basically. And then the 16th I have penciled in for the school's presentation, but I actually haven't set yet. I mean, I haven't confirmed that, so that's really our last night anyway.
If we
so.
haven't set the date and we need to slide to a Tuesday to be accommodated.
Well, I'm actually thinking about adding a meeting date so that we can go over what we're actually gonna recommend in the budget after
Yeah.
hearing all of these. Because
It's
this
a
is
good
we're in
idea.
a unique position this year where we can actually fund a couple things, but we need to think about what this means any operational increase, I don't know that we can sustain after
Yep.
this year. So we have to really talk about that, in regards to what we add. But, you know, it's possible, so. Okay.
Okay, any other questions for Parks? All right. Dan, thanks for coming up to the front again. Building and planning, I think I got John Erickson I see here. Hi, John.
Hi, Lonnie. Hi, hello, everyone.
Hi, John.
Are you doing building and planning or just building?
I'm doing planning.
Okay, John's just doing building.
Yes, thank you. Should I go ahead, Lon?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So I think building is very straightforward. We're level funded on every line item with the exception of salaries, which we've carried a 2% increase in case there is approval for cost of living. I think it's really that simple, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that anyone has.
Thanks, John, we'll see you later. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, does the finance committee, actually, Mike, do you have any questions?
I do not.
for Chuck?
That's pretty straightforward.
FinCom,
I do not.
That's an easy one.
That's how we like it.
John, thanks for coming in.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Dodson. And planning, Kim?
Yeah, I just wanted to, hold on, I'm scrolling to wherever it is.
This right, this shows no change in planning at all,
Scrolling it.
right? I mean, look. Right?
Okay,
Planning,
so
43,197, 43,197.
since a couple of you are fairly new, I just want
Well, that was, yeah, that was
explain what's
2020.
going on with planning, just in general. The board approved a number of years ago, we didn't have a planning department, we just had a planning board, and we had an administrative assistant that served both planning and building. So the chair of the planning board, Bill Ambrosino, and I had been working together since I got here to get some funding back in the budget to get a planner. So while we were doing that and the board had okayed it, I worked with Millville and Uxbridge, and we applied for a regionalization efficiency grant and were awarded it it's a program that we're creating that basically brings in a senior planner, somebody who is experienced and has years of experience that, can't be matched by someone coming out of college. That person is part-time and serves us all part-time in a certain number of hours. And then collectively, we would all hire one planner together, full-time going forward, that would gain the experience from this person as a mentor, but then stay on and get the experience they need to be successful, in a planning position. The grant is for $75,000. He's fully funded by that grant right now. His services are essentially free to the town right now. going forward, part of the grant's promise was that we guaranteed that we would fund, all 3 towns would fund the second year, right, so that we're matching basically. The way that it works is we are the host community, he works here, they pay us, so it gets, you'll see it come out of the salary lines or the cost lines in planning, and then we get reimbursed through a state grant. That's why the numbers went from, essentially $2,800 to $43,000 in just a couple of years. It certainly is our intention to have a planner in some capacity going forward for forever. So I think some of you might have met Jack when he's been at some of the meetings, but he's excellent, and he certainly, I pulled him out of retirement to come and do this for us and try to create this program, and he's been a blessing. So, any questions about that?
Was he the one at the last town meeting?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, he's worked for Carver for 25 years. He was, I spotted him out in the wild working for Keller Williams on a different project, and we hit it off. And I basically said, I need you to come here. And then I was planning on hiring part-time and sharing, and that's, what happened was the 3 towns together were gonna hire a part-time planner, and we did the first round of interviews, and they were not good. There wasn't one candidate in there that we felt comfortable could come in and actually succeed in an environment like this right off the jump, but I had just met Jack, and I said, we need to listen to this guy, and we brought him in, everybody loved him, we created this program and sold it to the state, and then they half funded it. So it's a trial. I mean, we don't know if it's gonna work, but,
I would have to say, so far, so good. He's been a huge asset to
Right, it's
everything,
hard, though,
to
to find
planning,
that
to
other
master
one.
planning committee. He's just there and provides this wealth of information.
He's great to work with.
What happens after this is, we are supposed to have someone else, and they've been out multiple times trying to find someone, and has not happened yet, so, eventually he will run out of hours, right, so, we have
Fair
to,
enough.
we're being selective.
Get as much done as we can.
I'm trying.
Yeah, hurry up,
I'm trying.
hurry up.
So, that's what's happening with planning. We also have some money, we also get some hours from CMRPC, which is Central Mass Regional Planning, to do some mapping and things for us that we pay every year. We pay dues into that organization in order to get, like, for instance, it was CMRPC who was helping us with the job description and the IMA, the intermunicipal agreement for the 3 communities. They're like the overlord, for that, so.
Any other questions?
I don't have any questions. Makes sense to me.
Any questions at home? Just speaking of planning, I just wanted to let everybody give an update on our chairman of our planning board, Bill Ambrosino. He had some surgery recently. I hope I'm not talking out of line. I'm pretty sure everybody know about it.
On Facebook, so.
Yes, he had a liver transplant, and the surgery went better than they ever expected, and he's already home and on the recovery. Talked to him once, and he already sounds better than he did, so all good news there.
Those Italian jeans,
Hey, you making fun of my jeans?
No, I got the same ones.
That's it for budget items tonight. Anybody got any questions, comments, statements?
Can we table the minutes? Yeah. Approve the minutes, because that we see them, and we can just go right into executive session.
Anything? Anybody at home?
Is there anything else?
75.
Finance committee, guys?
Everybody, not just us.
Good here, thank you.
And then we have a
Make
share
a
of
motion to
that.
close the finance committee meeting.
Second.
Second.
Meeting adjourned.
Finance committee meeting is adjourned. Good night, everybody. Feel free to stay if you'd like. We're gonna go into executive session. We're gonna skip over the minutes, and we'll get those in another night. Any questions? Mike, do you have a question?
Mike, you gotta unmute.
See you later. Good luck with your candidacy.
I move to enter into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Purpose 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Men in Permanent Firefighters Union, Local 4636 IAFF. Discussion in open session may be detrimental to the bargaining position Will reconvene only to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Raleigh, aye.
Tenio, aye.